Hi, everybody. I'm Jan Patterson. I'm part of the Theater Lovers Club team. We are the audience development arm of Theater Santa Fe, in case you didn't know that. You guys know much about this because you're here. And so I'm thank you, by the way, to Emily for providing the space. This is lovely. I'm not going to say a whole lot about Theater Lovers Club because I have these little cards to give you with the famous QR code on the back. Just click on it and you can see everything we do. Things like tonight, panels with some of the stars of our theater community. We do special invitations to special performances, certain plays. We do play reading for playwrights, events of an all evening. So we try and help you love theater with us. And that's what this is all about. And I'm crazy about theater. So,
And I still haven't figured out how to use those.
yes, I'll show you.
We'll do a tutorial after.
You can join. Membership is not required, but you get these famous emails from our team, and you know everything that's going on and all that sort of thing. And it's all free. We never charge for it. We are grateful for your donation. Thank you. All right. I think that's it. Hold your questions if you don't mind. We'll take questions in the last 10 minutes. I understand if it's really urgent. Raise your hand. It's fine. So, tonight we have three of what I consider the top ranking artistic directors in our community. We are so lucky to have these creative women. And I'm not going to read their bios, but we're going to reveal, I'm going to let them reveal who they are as the evening goes on. Just in case you don't know Emily, this is Emily Rankin. She's the assistant director. Yay! Next to her is Kelly Kiernan. Kelly is president of the board of Santa Fe Classic Theater, and she's going to explain what that means. This is Hogan. She's producing artistic director at Santa Fe Playhouse. Okay, so I'm the lucky one. I get to make up all the questions, which I did share with ladies, so they weren't shocked at what I was doing. My first question, I looked on AI. What's an artistic director? I got a page-long answer that included so many different things I couldn't believe it. But basically, it said to me, the artistic director is responsible.
Jan, I can't
Talk louder, Jan,
All right,
please.
responsible for the creative vision of the theater company, the lifeblood of the product. Now, that sounds to me like a real walk in the park. Ha! I'm kidding. So my first question is, will each of you, in a nutshell, give us what you do? Tell us what you do, loud and clear.
Jan can't be.
Well, yes, a lot. We do a lot. I think it's different at every company, but I'm responsible for choosing our programming, for choosing any directors who aren't myself, and overseeing the casting and who we bring on as the creative team. And then also I'm one of the faces of New Mexico Actors Lab. So I'm out here at fundraising events and events like this, representing the company in the world and in the community. And I also have some other duties like making the calendar for the entire year and doing our graphic design this year and some things like that. But overall, I'm responsible for the creative vision of the New Mexico Actors Lab. And when you think of the New Mexico Actors Lab, hopefully you think of something specific, and that's up to me.
Cool. Got that?
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly.
Explain.
So,
Your title.
Santa Fe Classic Theater is very much right now still in its infancy. We have produced and directed Shakespeare in the Garden at the Santa Fe Botanical Garden for 5 years. So I'm president of the board. I have no specific designation as artistic director, but in that role, that leadership role, and also directing specifically the last 3 years of the garden shows as the main director, I did major boots on the ground. So it was choosing the show, casting the show, looking at the marketing of the show, pulling together the production teams, and encompassed in that, which was kind of beyond what a normal director would do for one specific show, was the organization of the event itself. So event management was a huge part of what I found thrust upon me. It was totally not something I chose. This whole project came to us when the garden was looking for someone to take over this event. And our company and Patrick had worked as, Patrick is my partner in crime. But really, he was production manager for the show that was in the garden before Santa Fe Classic Theater took over. And the garden was responsible for doing the ticket sales, running the admin of that event. At the point they gave it to us, they no longer wanted to do that because they were very smart. It's a huge amount of administrative work that I was not prepared for. And had I known, I don't know whether I'd be, because I still remember like walking down the aisle in Target as I was like, I had a very full life at that point. I had 2 daughters. One of them was still in school, but it was like he called me after meeting with the people at the garden and was like, they want us to take it. Like the whole thing, like sit, and I was just like, "What are you mad?" I was just like, "What? No!" So, you know, a lot of it was boots on the ground. The first season was absolute deer in the headlights for me, learning all the things that were expected. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And then as our season, we were able, through the success of Shakespeare in the Garden, we did our first winter show in 24. Where are we? 25?
24.
Yeah, so 24 with Shakespeare Abridged because of the success. And so our season has been growing, and with that, my responsibility growing too. So, and all of us as a board function as a production team. So there's a whole nother growth that needs to happen as far as finding a board that will support the company and so that we can move into a production arm. But it's a lot.
I mean, same, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they basically hit on the key components. You know, we lead the artistic vision of the organization in kind of collaboration and compliance with the mission of the organization. So at the Playhouse, we have several different components of our mission. We have a multi-generational appeal. We have classics reimagined. We have new work. We all have these parameters within our mission statement that ask us to produce in accordance with that, right? So that's the first thing, is how do we select a season? And how do we know it will work? We don't. But we hope and we pray, and then we beg our friends to show up and beg for forgiveness many, many times. But really, you know, as the producing artistic director, I'm also head of basically production, and my dear friend Allison and my dear friend Zach are in the audience are going to know what that means more intently. But really, we select the season. We look at it from a success standpoint across a year, and then we also put it into reality. So we decide what the wheel is, and then we start to make it work. We decide to put the machine to work. So we're dealing with all the artists, we're dealing with all the hiring, the creative, the cast, the crews, all the logistics, all the budgetary management from show to show, dealing with anything you can imagine. We are involved in that, especially in organizations like ours that are relatively skeleton crew-like teams. Whether we are wearing many hats or designating down to several different people, we are really charged with, you know, setting forth a vision and ensuring its success through many, many, many conversations internally and externally with patrons and with board members and collaborators. But really, in terms of artistry, we want to try to find a way to bring something that is recognizable in collaboration with things that people may not know that they want to see yet. But they will know, okay? But we do the research nationally to see what is on the table, what are the social topics we need to be talking about, What are the partnerships and collaborations we have to be nurturing? And what story is at the crux of those things? And how can it bring people together? And it's not so much about saying, this is what we think you should think. It's about saying, these are important topics. Immigration, representation, diversity, capitalism, all those really light, fun things. But we find a way to package that through comedies or dramas or immersion or whatever you may want that to be, and say, we'll provide the situation. Now you please sit and experience it, and now you go talk amongst yourselves. And then come back and support us for the next one. So really, the producing part, I think, is a big part that often gets overlooked in our profession, because we can be perceived as kind of the dreamers. But but we also have to execute both parts of our brains. We have to be able to see the future and also connect so many people to get behind a common theme or a common story that is worth telling. And I think, to me, that's a huge part of what we do. At the Playhouse, I work in partnership with our managing director, Jessica, and we together also oversee marketing strategies, education strategies, outreach and community engagement. So we're kind of, at a leadership level, we're entrenched in all the different pieces of our nonprofit, right? But we are solely kind of in charge of setting forth the thematic conversations that will happen. So there's that.
Amazing, amazing. And we just think they walk on the stage. A lot of lines. Okay, what drives this? What possesses you to work this hard for us? I know you're working
so much for me.
Well, the underlying factor in all of that is that we believe that there's a passion for the art form, and believe that theater is a catalyst to bring people together, to affect social change, so all of those things. So for me, at the core of it is always that love for the theater, and then to the heady aspect of actually being able to create your artistic vision and to create projects for yourself that are meaningful to me as an artist as well. I mean, because there's not much monetary reward in my world, and certainly not a whole lot of recognition per se. But knowing that my place in this world happens to be being an artist who is a storyteller, that's the great satisfaction why we would be mad enough to do all of that, because it's horrible, it's terrifying a lot of the times to put yourselves out there in that way,
So
anything to that?
what drive, I think it's with any nonprofit, I think the focus of a nonprofit is service. And so much of what we do is in service, whether it's to artists saying, please don't stop what you're doing, please continue to be an artist, please continue your discipline. We create the space to have people fill it. And I think that is worth it tenfold. I think a lot of times people in our positions have been through so many different facets of the producing world, whether it's acting, stage management, production assistants, whatever, what have you, some writers. We have been through the tiers. And I think when you've gone through that to some degree, you begin to realize the bigger purpose is just ensuring that it happens. Yeah. And I think that in itself is the driving focus.
Emma, anything to add?
I think theater is a great tool for building empathy, not only in the people performing it, but in the people viewing it. And I think that connection between audience and play is vital to our emotional well-being, to our psychological well-being. And I think that feeling that connection, there's nothing quite like it, breathing with the actors and really being a part of the story, and building that tool for empathy. And I think that's hugely important, particularly right now in the world.
Oftentimes, I don't feel like I care about an issue until I hear one of you perform it for me. I got that. So for me, it's what I'm supposed to think about. I need you for that purpose. What's the process from actor to AD? Got any hints for the aspirees in the audience?
Well, I started as a director when I was
Okay, director.
13. I started apprenticing with this director at a university and taking his notes for him and just learning everything I could about theater. And I did that for 15 years before I graduated from college. And so that was my first sort of entryway into theater, and watching the work from a director's perspective from the beginning was hugely impactful to my artistic life. But I also have always loved acting, and so I've always wanted to do both, and I've really just wanted to do theater for my whole life. And so however I could, I've stage managed, I've done props, I've run a light board, whatever it was. It's been just my passion since I was a little kid, and I never really considered being an artistic director because the producing side is so challenging and difficult, and there's such a huge lift in terms of fundraising and building an audience space and building relationships with the community and being in charge of so much, and making sure that you're choosing programming that audiences will respond to, and pushing your audience a little bit, but also giving the audience things that they'll enjoy. It's a huge balance, and so I never saw myself as an artistic director particularly, but I was very lucky to be brought on here by Robert Benedetti and Nico Ballas, who started the New Mexico Actors Lab, and I really felt ready for it. I feel like I know the Santa Fe theater scene, and I've done so many different jobs over the years. I felt like I was ready to sort of take on that responsibility, and so yeah, I don't know if that answers the
It
question.
does. I mean, it sounds like certainly your unique situation, you have done it all. So you know it. Nobody can say, well, she doesn't know lights. I mean, she doesn't.
I don't really know light.
Right, that's a wrong thing. I understand that. What do you, Kelly, come into this and see?
Yeah, well, so I came into it strictly from, and I was an actor for 35 years, member of the Actors Equity Association, never saw myself taking the helm. I would do teaching workshops, that kind of thing, some small directing projects, but always completely saw myself as an actor. But those 35 plus years in the trenches prepared me. The next thing for me was to be a director of these Shakespeare shows, and I had done Shakespeare for the larger portion of that, of my years as an actor, and outdoor, actually too. So when the directorial aspect came on to me, I think it was part of a growth in consciousness, and again, it was something that was a necessity because I had been assistant directing with Patrick, and then he was like, once we started building larger sets for Shakespeare in the Garden, he was like, he physically just couldn't do both. And it was like, okay, baby, it's time. And I went kicking and screaming because 25 cast and crew, like when you're talking Shakespeare, it's a huge amount of energy to channel. And me as a director facing a room full of actors was terrifying to me. Once again, it was just like, because those were my peeps, and I was always sitting out there, watching the director for the moves. And then the rest of it grew out of, as far as the production, I think, like Emily, and I don't know Anna very well, but I think there's a special artist that does have both that right and left brain, and that's rare. And I always happen to be scary good at details too. So I think that combination was key, and then it was just, once again, boots on the ground and learning it as I went, but never anything that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be an artistic director one day.
Without the producing.
Yeah, but knowing what it was to be an actor definitely helped me be the director that I am now. And I think now I'll be even a better director that I've gone back to acting just recently because I took 6 years away from it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
such a growth thing.
yeah. Where are you in this?
Yeah, I think it's like a similar journey. I think I studied music and art in school and in college, and I eventually transitioned to theater. So I kind of had a multifaceted artistic experience in school. But one of my mentors really gave me a lot of opportunity to shadow the directorial process, and really an intense acting process. So I took some private lessons there, but at one point he showed me a TV show, and some of you might know it. It's kind of an older TV show. It's called The Slings and Arrows.
Oh, yes.
So for Shakespeare nerds, that's me. But in that show, he must have known or cursed me with the destiny there. But in the show, it features a theater company searching for an artistic director to save it from itself, if it were, you know. And so that was the first time I'd known what that track was. You know, I was familiar with the acting, design, directorial, whatever. But I saw that and I go, oh, I'm intrigued by that. So when I went into college, and I also shadowed as an assistant director for like many years. I eventually moved to New York and I pursued that pretty much full time. Assistant directing, stage managing, some acting, but I segued out of that relatively early in my career because I knew that I liked to see the world manifest on stage, and I had that ability to do that. I could see stuff, I could pre-block it, I could see the world, describe it, and put it up, you know, and I knew that that was the talent that I had versus maybe performing. So I studied that with a complete abandon, really diligently. I kind of freelanced for maybe 2 to 3 years in New York. In that time, I worked with a company called Rising Sun Performance Company, who primarily focused on new work development. They worked at the indie and off-Broadway theater levels in New York. And I worked through them and eventually became the associate artistic director with my mentor, Akia, who was the artistic director. So she and I helmed 4 different years of seasons together, and with an emphasis on new work development and on social work. And we had a lot of residencies. But let me tell you, like grassroots producing without a home, without a brick and mortar, nothing will teach you faster than that how to just get your stuff together. Okay? So I had a little bit of background in the film world as well as a first and second AD on set. So I kind of knew how to run things, if that makes sense. It's like kind of stage management, kind of production management, different things like that. So I kind of honed those skills and also nurtured my artistry on the side, directing and things like that. We were doing a bunch of projects, then the old pandemic hit, and I relocated to Texas. And when I was in Texas, I got connected with a theater that was in the midst of a huge capital campaign. And that theater wanted people, they couldn't figure out how to get people in. And they kind of talked about movies, kind of talked about this and that. And I said, nothing brings people together faster than the theater. Get a musical, get Shakespeare, 25 people, you're gonna have an audience. People have to be shown how to use space. You know, an empty room doesn't do anyone any good. But the theater really quickly teaches you how to value our most important asset, which is each other, right, and what we can make. So I started as their producing artistic director there and helmed their capital campaign to get the theater renovated. And so that was the last 4 years in Texas. So I've had about close to 10 years of artistic director experience, and specifically producing. I think that's a really important part of it, because the artistic is one thing, it's the producing mechanism that's the total other thing. It's like, how do we make it work? How can we afford it? How can we keep one step in front of the other? Maybe a few back, but then you keep going. But eventually I was connected with the Santa Fe Playhouse. And it's been an interesting journey in the last year. I say that, but nothing that we can't handle. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But again, the theater prepares you for anything. You begin to change your expectations. The bad thing will happen. And if you don't expect that, then you haven't been doing it long enough. So it's about just, to me, like, it just kind of, we continue through it because we know that the problems will arise. And the producing aspect is how do we keep going despite that? And figure out and call on each other, whatever is needed. So that's kind of a bit about my trajectory through the AT journey.
Nice.
I can see why each of you is successful at this in your own right. Very much so. I'm asking questions I want answered, so we'll get to you guys. What's the dance between choosing the work, the place, and pleasing the audience?
What did you say, Jan?
What's the
Dance.
dance between choosing the product, the place, and pleasing the audience? Go ahead, whoever. You've covered some of this ground, but I mean, you heard the response here. What is that dance between picking, play, a show, and selling it, pleasing the audience?
If you're gonna direct it, which was and my experience with this, first we had a trajectory of we were gonna do the high comedies first for the first several seasons that we were doing. So that was kind of narrowed down. But first there has to be a hook. When you're looking at the material and looking at the different possibilities, it was like I need an emotional hook in order to build that vision. So I'll look at numerous scripts and then, but something has to, I'll narrow it down to a few that really speak to me on a personal level. And then it's sort of a subjective thing. It's about plugging into the cosmic or collective consciousness, right? And being an empathetic and highly kind of sensitive person, that's the way I operate. There's a certain amount of tapping into, you just kind of like sit with it for a while and try and feel what's going on in that vibe. That is it time for a comedy? Can I do this? What does need to be addressed? What do people need to know? And coming out of the pandemic, I felt strongly that it was my responsibility if I was gathering a group of people together, and that's what was going on. I wanted to keep the vibration high. I think there was a lot of consciousness growth people needed during that phase, and laughter is a good point. But there's a lot of laughter and poignancy, I think, that are combined in those Shakespeare plays. So those two acts, and then when you're actually and so that's as far as like pleasing your audience, getting a feel for what your demographic is needing at that point in time. And then the other factor is always how much money you got. Really, it's like for us, it was as dire as that always. Looking at with these huge shows, it's difficult to find a classic work that doesn't have a large cast or a specific set requirement. And since Santa Fe Classic Theater, one of our MOs is to produce classically within a historical context, costumes are huge too. So having the, what your talent is, your local talent, and Santa Fe Classic Theater felt very strongly about utilizing its local talent. I think artists give up a lot to stay in Santa Fe in this beautiful place because you're not in a larger market. So all of those factors come into, that dance. It's just like, and sometimes it takes a really long time to set with that for me, being like relative, but it's a difficult decision to come to for the most part. There's a lot that you're tapping into.
Want to add anything?
I think, I don't know if I'm successful at it yet. You'll have to come to the rest of the shows in our season to see. This is my first season. I feel very lucky that we have 5 chances to get it right in the Actors Lab because we do 5 full productions a year. But I think it's, when when you're choosing multiple shows, a lot goes into how do these shows live in dialogue with each other? What is your season saying overall? How do you vary the messages that you're putting out there and the tone that you're putting out so that there's something for everyone? That's something that's important to me when I choose shows, and it is a really delicate balance between choosing shows that you know the audience will enjoy and choosing shows that you think the audience could enjoy, and sort of pushing gently, lovingly, pushing folks out of their comfort zone, which is, and not with every single play. I think you have to have a balance of familiar and
So this is the season building.
yes.
One
I think,
comedy, one social, or
yeah,
no?
and I think for me it's a little less specific than that. Like Bike America, the show that we've got right now, is a comedy, but it's also, there's a lot about sort of generational, issues. It's for the most part really slapstick and ridiculous and funny, and then it's very poignant at the same time. And so I think every show has many disparate elements, and so it's less about saying we need a comedy or a social justice play, and more about taking all of the nuanced messages of each show and seeing how they might fit together. And I think it's also really crucial as an artistic director to know what other work is happening in the community and to know what else people are seeing and to go and see other shows and be in the audience and feel the energy around you. That's always been really inspiring to me, and to get a feel for, where is this place that I live and what's happening here and what would be a good fit for Santa Fe in particular. That's hugely important to me as well.
It's lovely to know that thought, that deep thought. And Kelly, you have the classic, you're open. Anna, you probably have a hugely varied season with stuff all over the place. You want to throw anything in
Yeah,
on this?
and it's nothing super new. I think it's similar. I think it depends on how long the organization's been producing, really. Sometimes there is kind of a formulaic approach to how, maybe not in terms of content or theme, but in terms of size. Do we want to do a two-hander or one-hander? Can we do a large-scale musical? But it is like the full. Miss Roylance, everybody. So we think about what Anne Roylance wants to be in, and then we pick that.
We paid her to do it.
Sorry, guys.
Come at a better time, Ann.
We were just talking about you. But yeah, so we opt generally for 7 to 8 slots. We have 7 to 8 slots. That's all contingent on a production timeline to say, if we start here and end here, how many can we fit in a year, right? So you do divide up the calendar across the full year, right? So that's, we then look at staff capacity. We also look at our resources, which could include directors, actors, designers. Who are we trying to serve? Who is active? Who is needing an opportunity? What story is wanting to be told? So it is, they both said, it's very, very nuanced. I don't know that it's ever as formulaic as like, oh, I'm doing a comedy this year, I'm doing a drama next year. It's like, no, we're gonna do all of it, if you can. So for this year, I think an important piece is like, as the AD, you have to be passionate about what it is. And I think that is part of the board's investment, the audience's investment, the patron's investment in the organization and in you as the leader of that narrative. It's like they're trusting that you're passionate about what that is and that this story is intentional and it's vital now. Whatever it is, it can be silly and that can be important. Sometimes people are tired of being told what's going on in the world, okay? Sometimes they need a dancing omelet. I don't make the rules, I just pay attention. But like, it's just about paying attention and balancing the different components, contemporary versus classic, musical versus a straight play, a comedy versus a drama, something social versus something comfortable, a slice of life or something super magical realism vibes. Like, there's so many ways that you can pull a story, okay? And so what matters is what story are you wanting to tell, and how can you just then balance it all? And I'm currently planning for 2026, and and 2026 is being planned with the Anna Hogan that's in front of you right now in 2025. And I think that's an interesting thing, is we can never quite be extremely topical, but we try to read as much as we can, we try to see as much as we can, pay attention to who's here and what they're wanting. That is, we're here to serve the audience who wants to engage in these stories. So anyway, it's all the things, and
That's not much.
it's so easy. Yeah.
All right, I'll shift gears a little bit. This is a question I love. It's more of an acting question, because I'm fascinated by the leadership qualities that you each have to have and exhibit. You've all cut your chops as actors, and now you're artistic directors. I have Virginia Woolf in mind when I'm asking this. What is it like to direct or be directed? Let me just do one. What's it like to direct another person in a role that demands so much self-understanding and self-awareness? And I am thinking about Virginia Woolf. I hope all of you saw it. That show just came to mind. What
In
is that
6
like?
words or less. Go ahead.
Take it away, Kelly.
Well, so to be
Well,
directed
in your case, you were directed by
right.
another person, and you had, to my eye, both you and Pat had this deep self-awareness. You knew what was going on there. What is it like to be directed in a show? It's maybe too complicated for tonight, but toss it to lightly. What's it like to be directed in a show that has so much self-awareness that's essential to the part?
Well, it was a blessing to me to have Claire Davidson directing, and the reason I chose her was because I knew that we couldn't pull off a piece like that unless we had such extreme attention to detail, a breadth of experience that was like, I mean, she's world class and has done theater all over the world, and with classics in particular. And the material was to have that emotional support that she also brought to the table was huge. And Claire and I knew each other for 2 years before I asked her to do this, and so I knew that we had a similar way of approaching the work. And so to finally, after 6 years of admin and producing and directing, and that to finally go, it was, once again, I use this word a little bit, it was terrifying. It really was. Like it wasn't easy for me to make that decision to take on that role, because it's like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, doesn't make a sound. So all those years I wasn't an actor, I'm like, well, I'm not an actor anymore. So yeah, but that's the way you feel when your energy totally focused goes on something else. It's like there are parts that have to fall away, and for me it was just a gift, and knowing the trust that I had with Claire to handle this piece was, it was amazing gift from the
Definitely
gods.
trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emily?
Yeah, I do think it's all about trust, and I don't think there's a wrong way to do theater, but there are ways that that there are people that you feel more of a kinship with than others, and I think that it's, like Kelly was saying with Claire, they approach the work in a similar way, so that really worked, and I think that's important. And I've worked with a lot of different directors who direct in a lot of different ways, and I've learned something from each and every one of them. But some processes are more frustrating than others.
You were so
No.
good in that
That's a nice
role.
way to say it.
Cradling the liquor
Oh,
bottle
yeah.
like it was a palmate. I didn't get that until the next day.
That's
Going on.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I don't necessarily have that specific experience, but I can
Okay.
generally agree, yeah.
Yeah, you're the director.
Stay in my high spot.
What's the best part about being an artistic director? And then, of course, the worst part. We need a minute to think. There's best parts. You've done the best parts, but
I mean, I'm pretty clear on the best part of it is once the
Shows up.
manifestation of it, and being a channel for all of these amazing artists. It's such a buzz, you know, because I liken it to like, you know, having this stagecoach with like this team of like wild horses, because you can have the idea, and like Anna said, it's like you better be planning for the shit to go down because it's gonna. But then having the being able to sit there and go, oh, you know that you hold that end game there, and also allowing all of these artists to contribute what they have to contribute. I have worked with some directors that don't want your opinion, and I think the excellent product comes from all of the artists that are, whether it's the musicians, the designer, all of them having that say. You have to be strong enough to, if it's not aligning with the ultimate goal. But to me, that is that group experience, that collective creation. And then, you know, I'd be able to go sit up in the woods in the garden at night, drink wine, and watch what was going on. And it was like knowing that in some way your focus created that world is just like, because we're all here as, you know, that creation is, you know, constant being able to create is just a huge gift. And then the worst part of it for me is fundraising. You know, the money aspect is like, you know, that the nuts and bolts is really terrifying to deal with most of the time, because you never know.
yeah.
And yeah, as evidenced.
Yeah, I think the best part, it's been interesting because again, I think every organization's a little bit different. I've directed a lot of the pieces I've produced. I'm a producer by trade as a freelancer, so I know very specifically what makes that worth it, like as a director-producer. And I think really being able to see, you know, everything come to fruition and be like, oh my gosh, it happened. And it's good, and people are happy. I think like the beautiful thing about the theater art form is that it does not last forever. It's not a painting, it's not a sculpture, it's not, it exists in the making, sure. I mean, that's the debate, right? When does art really happen? But we paint these layers in rehearsal and production, and then the communion with the audience, like that is the art, because it's live. It's a live operation of stage managers and board ops and actors that you just hope listen to you at some point. But it really is like, I think that is the most beautiful part of what we do, is the fact that it will not last forever, and it was never meant to. And we constantly birth and grieve each story that we tell, and that's how personal it is. And like talking about the sacrifices we make to prioritize this type of work, it's intense. It's between the fundraising, between the supporting other organizations, between meeting new designers, seeing the actors, it's alive. And I think that the idea of being able to have so many people that you commune with for 3 months, 4 months in a like straight, 30 hours a week, everybody, that's really so magical. And that's a community. That's how you build those long-lasting friendships and relationships. So to me, that's the best part. And I think the hardest part is just, you know, when you have something to offer, an opportunity, it's very hard to not be able to offer it to everybody. And to me, that is the hardest part, because we at so many points, we're the crux of decisions, which and art is personal, as much as we don't want it to be, it's personal. And how do we pick the script that will mean everything to somebody? How do we cast the part? How do hire the designer? How do we make decisions that we understand, we know everyone? How do we do that and say, you know, it was the right choice for what we have in this exact moment with our organization at this time? That's hard, and it's hard to carry that. So that's mine.
Yeah, I love the process. I love being in the room. I love seeing people come together with this to build this world out of language. I love seeing people get excited to make something together, and I love that when it's working just right, that truly collaborative experience where everyone is really sharing the best of themselves to bring this story into being. And then it's just a sort of a cherry on top for me to get to see an audience enjoy that, because selfishly I enjoyed the process, you know. But bringing, you know, creative people into this group and watching people get that fire in their eyes where they're excited to go home and work on their lines, or they're excited to come up with an idea for what the set should look like, or whatever it might be. That's the best part for me. And I think the hardest part is, like Anna was saying, this job involves a lot of difficult conversations. It involves saying no to a lot of people. And how do you do that in a loving way and a kind way? Because it's not personal, but it is personal. You know, when you cast one person, that means that everyone else is not cast in that role. And so, how do you? I think it's especially difficult having been an actor for so long and being on the other side of that rejection, to then suddenly have the power, you know, for casting in particular, or choosing, you know, the work. So I think that's the trickiest part, is those difficult conversations.
This is, I mean, I've noticed, but here you articulate what this takes, and we're so greedy, and so needy, and here you are willing to solve some emotional things for us. In our household, if we talk about the play afterwards, it's successful. We may have hated it, but it's successful. We successfully hated it.
Yes.
And that's okay. It doesn't happen often at all. It can. It hasn't happened in that way. We're going to take Q&A in about a minute. My last question is, of the plays you choose, how many have you seen performed? How critical is it?
I sort of prefer not to have seen it. I'd rather.
Any of them?
Well,
I mean,
every once in a while, yes, but I prefer not to have anyone else's vision sort of in the way. I'd rather have read it and been impacted by the story that it's telling, and then, you know, find a way
Start
to put
back from
my,
scratch.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because otherwise I think especially if it's a good production, it's really hard to get that out of your mind and say, okay, but how do I want to do it? And yeah, that's just tricky. So most of the plays that I choose, I've not seen performed. I've only read them.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but not have said, I grew up watching Shakespeare, so in particular, so I've seen most of the ones that I've done, and I like mine the best. Well, sometimes it's just like, it's because you see I don't mind seeing them because you see what works and what doesn't, and very often it's just like, I mean, you're doing a farce, stick to the rules of farce. And directors will make really odd, like, you know, you could drive a truck through
That's
some
a
of the
good question.
pauses.
Is it easier to have seen a production that you didn't like, or is it easier to have seen a production that you really loved?
I think equally, I think, again, it's like that thing of like, it's a different palette every time. It's like, you're gonna get a different product with, and that's why with Shakespeare, it's like, you the way you cast it, the way the director's looking at it, the way you decide to set it is gonna, and basically everything those actors bring changes the dynamic. So it doesn't really bother me to see a good one, you know, and to
Yeah, you're
see a
in a
play
unique
that
situation,
works
yeah.
structurally is like, you know, is really satisfying. So it's not crucial, and it doesn't really affect my end product one way or another, I would say. Yeah.
I'd have to put it in AI and they'd tell me what it is. Anyway, Anna?
Yeah, I think the same. It doesn't affect me really one way or another. I think that a script, like the script is the skeleton, that's the essentials, it's the words and the themes. We just need to know that. And I think this is kind of more of a directorial question because it's how do we interpret that onto the stage. So I think I think actually most of the pieces I've done, I had never seen. And I tend to, as an AD, I tend to opt for pieces that I don't think have been done in the region because it just helps broaden and it makes me know that, oh, it wasn't done 3 years ago, good, you know? But I think it's a safer bet to know that it's something topical and new. But even like something like Shakespeare, anything classic, it can all be interpreted. And I am one, because my background is in new work development, I am used to not working with things like stage directions. I'm used to being able to take the core of what it's asking for, see the space that we're in. You know, we're in a 99-seat black box. Putting a large-scale musical into that is going to have to be interpreted, as Anne Roylance knows. But I think that there's so many requirements that go into putting a piece on a stage, and we have to pay attention to all of them. Who do we have? What space do we have? What budget do we have? And that's going to require it to be different. So I don't know if it really bothers me to have seen it, but I think I'm more intrigued by treating it as if it is a new work.
Fascinating. Who's got a question? Suzanne?
I just cannot tell you how exciting it is to see 3 women artistic directors.
Yeah.
I wanted if you could ask the fates for one gift for you for in the coming year with your jobs as artistic director. You can get one thing. What would it be?
A venue. That was easy.
Easy fundraising.
Yes.
Bring it on. We'd love
Bring
to
it
do
on.
more.
Yeah. A big old check. No, I think, yes, fundraising. I think it would also be really nice. In some way, if we can, things become so expensive. You know, the Playhouse just became an equity house officially. So the costs are quite expensive, which is fine. We can manage that. What I really wish is that there was a happy way for tickets to get less expensive. And I think that if we can decrease the accessibility barrier to get people in, and if we could get more information, if it is a ticket hesitancy, cost hesitancy, or if it's something else, that I want more people in the audience. I desperately want that because that makes the machine run. We can build the infrastructure that will last, but it's contingent on the communion. So that's what I would probably ask for, because I think so many ways that would solve so many of our challenges.
Yeah. Sherry?
Yeah, as artistic directors, how much do you have responsibility for tackling our current political terror? Like someone mentioned the word diversity before. I was afraid the goon squads would come in and arrest everybody. I mean, that's what we're living. Without maybe some hitting people over the head, but what is the responsibility in the times we're living on? Can we avoid actually tackling these things, again, without, going, sending
So
heavy
your
messages?
question
I'm
is-
just wondering what do you think about that?
Responsibility to.
Yeah. I think to be clear, we're working for nonprofit, so it's very different than commercial because we're beholden to missions and to our board of directors. And those missions are the parameters of how we're able to tackle political content. So we are fortunate enough, the Playhouse, to be governed by a body that endorses diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No.
So that is an important aspect, is what does your nonprofit serve? Okay, so because we can, we will. And we will, again, it's not about telling people what to think, it's about presenting the situation and letting people come to their decisions. And I think for us, because we have a focus on new work, even this summer, we have 4 different pieces that are going to be new contemporary readings of new pieces. We're doing a new workshop. So we tackle that by creating space and giving funds and a venue to people who have something to say about that. And I think that's how we will continuously tackle that in a way that is not divisive in our own way, if that makes sense. But yes, we do, to me, I think because of the privilege I have in my capacity, I'm able to enter those conversations. And you can see our statement on our website. It still exists, it's there. And so many arts organizations, you know, we're quite small, really, in the scope of the nation, so we're not receiving receiving federal funding at present. So we don't have the same concerns. Again, that's why audiences are so important. Because if we want to put those pieces on, we want to know that that conversation is wanting to be had. And again, that helps us continue to fund that type of content over and over again. So that would be my
Well, and to build on what Anna says, I think the nature of theater is about combating that divisiveness, which I think the political climate right now is about dividing and just so hatred, so angry, you don't, you know, and keep that divisive vibe going on when inherently just putting theater out there is about bringing community together and doing a like-minded group, which is why artists are always considered subversive and why that is a threatening thing. Because we are bringing people together to talk about stuff, and when people come together and raise issues of what's going on, that's what can affect change. The more people stay in their homes and they're on their digital screens, it's like, and being controlled by whatever's going on and what is being fed to them, it's like, no, talk to people, be in communion with your community, with the people who will rise up if we need to.
That's really
Yeah.
an important understanding to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the political landscape right now reaches into every area of life. And so in reflecting life back on stage, how can it not be political? I think theater is inherently political in that way, and it is that tool for empathy. And I think it's a balance of when do we need, fantasy and laughter, and when do we need real, the real conversation of what this is what's actually happening. And I do think the balance is important. I think it's more important than ever to have moments of joy,
Yeah.
and also to be aware of what's going on and be informed. And so I think, yeah, it is that balance always.
I saw today this comment, reality with a side of escapism. And over here?
Yes, my question is about the future of theater and what responsibility you feel you have to engaging younger audiences so that theater can continue. Like, I have 2 teenagers at home. If I tell them I want to go to the theater with you, I get like eye rolls and like they can't imagine anything worse than 2 hours on a Saturday. With no windows. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is always a part of, like, when we hire interns to come into our shows. When we brought Comedy Bears actually up to the schools in Escalante up north, and it's like, it's a huge responsibility, because that is the future of theater, is to let children, or the younger ones, get that that excitement when they go to a live show, to feel that connection, and it's not going to last if we can't educate. I mean, I grew up on theater, with theater. I lived outside of New York City, and it was like, it was part of the fabric. And if that's falling away, yeah, getting ways that they can actually do it, and see it again. It's that ticket accessibility again. How do we make that happen when it's so difficult to find the money,
Yeah, I'm seeing
to make it happen.
everybody nodding here.
But, and it's like, and it's the preservation of not even just the art form, but of language, and again, connection. Like, that's what, you know, in the time that I've seen the kids, when the cell phones started coming in, to where it is now, and social media, it's just like, it's horrifying to me. I mean, it's like, they absolutely have to remember what it is to have that, or then you lose empathy, and then it gets really scary.
There's gonna be in the fall, Theater Santa Fe is gonna do a youth immersion. We're bringing all the high schools, together, kids from high schools, with theater games and all kinds of stuff for, I think, a couple days. That may be a great way, and keep tuned in, go onto TSF website and get your kids in that, and let them see what it can be to talk to someone in another language and agree or disagree in a way that they both survive. So it is 7:02. We promised these ladies they'd be out of here at 7. I guess it depends on whether you guys wanna ask the questions outside of the meeting, because we gotta let them go, but come on down. and
Mine
yes,
is
Deb.
not a question, it's just I feel more hopeful about this theater community than I have felt in so many years. And I have been around here.
Yep,
No,
Me
the
too.
interaction, the cooperation, seeing what's happened with all the theaters in Santa Fe. I mean, if we had a steps out, most of you know what that is, theater lovers will get together, we'll go and see a play. We used to have one maybe every 2 months. We have one a week. One a week now from all of you guys.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it's
bond.
not just each theater, it's the collaboration that I'm seeing amongst all of you, the friendship, really. And it's so beautiful. And I thank you all so much. I love having you all here.
And thank you to all our actors here, we've got lots of actors in the audience, so thank you guys for coming. and
Thank you.
honoring These beautiful women.
Thank you for hosting.
Oh, I love it.